Good. Well, thank you for coming out. We've got a really great panel. This is called Fast Tracking Content Support on Connected Devices. I've done this for a couple different conferences now, and you know, if you are a content publisher, if you have a service, or if you just would like to understand how to get on devices, it's a bit of a minefield. There's a lot to consider. And so hopefully over the next 45 minutes, you'll get some great insights. We've got just a fabulous panel here with us, and we're not going to waste any time with too long of introductions. So I'd just like everybody to go down the line, starting with Alex, and introduce yourself, the company you're with, what you do, and then we're going to start the conversation.
Sure. So I'm Alex Holub. I'm the founder and CEO of Vidora. We're an early stage tech company based out of Silicon Valley, San Francisco. And we have a product, Vidora for Media, that helps drive increased engagement in applications via personalized push notifications and personalization in apps.
Hi, I'm Imran Mescatia, and I'm with Redbox Instant by Verizon. And we're a streaming service. We launched last March, a little over a year ago. And we're available on the web and on gaming consoles, TV devices, mobile devices. We've got a subscription plan and a transactional video store as well. My team is responsible for product management, user experience, and customer support. And before that, I spent about 12 years at Microsoft doing streaming video.
Hi, my name is Evan Young. I'm Senior Director of Product Management at TiVo. TiVo, we have about 4.5 million of our devices distributed through retail as well as cable operators in the United States and in Western Europe. For the purpose of today, I oversee integration of third-party apps onto our devices, so apps you may be familiar with like Netflix and Pandora and Spotify, YouTube, as well as our developer SDK and API programs.
Hello, my name is George Bokuchao. I'm CEO and Chief Architect of Tulix Systems, company out of Atlanta, Georgia. We're a complete IPTV solution company, end-to-end, starting from ingest of the content and building applications on all kind of connected devices. We've been in business since 1995 and have multiple installations of complete IPTV solutions. Thank you.
Excellent. You can see a great panel, and I realize I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Mark Donegan. I oversee sales and strategy for a company called Beamer. What we do is we take an H.264 or an HEVC file, reduce it 50%. The key is it's visually, perceptually identical to what you started with. So bring a lot of value for optimizing networks. We're going to talk a little bit about that later. Okay, so I want to start, and I'd like to begin with the pieces required with getting support on a device. And there's a lot involved. I think some of us might think about the UI elements, so what you see visually, but there's all the way to the format support, DRM. There's a lot of technologies associated. But the question I want to start with, and this will be one of the few times that we kind of just go down the line, and Alex, since you're to my left, we'll start with you. You know, pick one. If you want to pick two, that's fine too. But what is one key element or piece that if I'm designing support for a device that I need to think about, I need to be aware of? It could be a technology, it could be an approach. You know, how would I start? I'm a content publisher. I've got content, and I want to get on Roku, on a tablet, on you name it.
Right. I mean, I think what I've seen from a lot of publishers, one of the first decisions they make is around how much money they want to spend, and that's really going to dictate how sophisticated approach they take. So I think that on one end you have these templatized experiences, so there's a lot of companies out there creating templatized app experiences, and on the other hand you have much more customized and branded experiences that you can create. And so that's sort of the first bifurcation, is how much you want to spend, and that's going to dictate sort of the level of customization that you make. I think another aspect, I think, is, you know, the shop you choose, ideally they do have experience, I think, in video. I mean, there's a lot of complex integrations around ad networks, ad servers, payment platforms that really go into creating a good experience. And I think folks that don't have that background often are slower to integrate those.
That's great. And later, I've got a question prepared, to get your insights on how you'd go about selecting. But I don't want to jump ahead. So, Imran.
So first of all, totally agree with what Alex said. Make sure you understand how much you're willing to spend and how much you're able to spend on your application development. I think one of the things that benefited us greatly is taking a real thoughtful approach to how you separate the data layer and the platform layer from the application layer. And it's not always obvious where you make that transition and where you make that bifurcation in your architecture. But what that enabled us to do is we built out a pretty robust API layer for our platform that enabled us to get onto something like 15 different unique app devices in our first year of business streaming, which is faster than any other streaming service I know of. But the only reason we were able to do that is because we really built that robust API and platform layer that our apps sit on top of.
Yeah, I'd echo all the stuff that Imran said about getting onto multiple devices quickly in terms of thinking about how to stage those elements. I'd like to focus a little bit more, though, on something that we've discovered at TiVo. We are a little bit different than, say, Apple TV or Roku or some of these other devices. But I mean, I think you can develop a great app and have great content, but if your app is not discoverable and your content is not discoverable on the platform, then what have you done all of this work for? And so one of the things that we encourage especially our video app makers to do is to make their catalogs available for search and discovery on our platform, because when users come to TiVo, when they're searching for a show, whether it's Breaking Bad, we want to be able to tell them, oh, it's on AMC, it's also on Netflix, it's also on Amazon. You can find Breaking Bad clips on YouTube. You can find, a little video podcast that somebody has put together of them doing, whatever Walter White impersonations. And, everything from all of the major content sources to even a lot of our media RSS feeds are indexed along with linear television content. So it enables for very quick, both integrated search and discovery, whether someone's looking or they're just browsing, we've got it all there. And that really helps some of the apps that don't necessarily have their own brand name still bubble to the top so their content can be discovered.
Great.
I have a little bit different angle that I'll share with you regarding connected devices. Our experience is based on actually working with in the field with a lot of different companies on a smaller size. So very often there is a question, so which device we want to start with first? For us, it's very important to have end user subscribers, keep them very happy. And what research we're doing, and based on that research, we're coming up actually with recommendations for our customers is end user experience. There are a lot of different boxes. There are Roku box, there is a Vizio, there is a Sony, there is a Logitech, there is a other systems. They all work differently, believe me or not. User experience is different. Hardware, actually performance is different, and end user is very sensitive. Actually, as simple as it is, as a remote control could affect a decision, or to make a decision to switch between two platforms, just because the remote control is better for one device than the other one. Obviously, another criteria which we're paying attention to is how popular is the device. So if device is very good, but it's impossible to get in like on Amazon or any other stores, nobody could get it, it's probably not the best solution. We wouldn't recommend to our customer. So this I'm talking about set-top box type of device. Again, it would be Roku, Google Box, or any other similar type of boxes. So one of the biggest components that I think is important before someone will make a decision is a user experience and the end user experience with a specific hardware devices. This is number one. And the other one, obviously, with mobile devices. So far, what we found, whether it will be Android-based or that means tablets or phones, as well as iOS-based devices, they are pretty much pretty good from the point of user and user experience. So to summarize what I said, and I'm sorry, maybe I was a little bit long here. User experience is what dictates what to choose, what kind of platform. Because in our experience, development costs, no matter how it could be, it's still almost like one-time development cost. The biggest expense is not development cost based on our experience. The real cost is your users, your subscribers. Do they like the system or they don't? And this is what we're based on.
Those are some great insights. Thank you. So I find when we talk about app support, that conjures up notions of an app on a mobile device, typically. And yet, you can go to an app store on Roku. You can go to the app store on a connected TV platform. All the major vendors have them. I'd like to, and I want to, I'd like Alex to comment, and then Evan, I think this is perfect. I'd like for each of you, from the perspective of an app on a mobile device, so this would be Alex kind of more where you are, where your company is, and Evan, comment on some of the things that are required or different, an app on a hardware device or an embedded device. Very different architectures, and I find, when I'm discussing with people and they're asking about, how can I get on this platform? Or, they'll say, I developed an HTML5, runs great in a browser on an Android device, but it runs terrible in an embedded device. Why is that? There's a performance hit. It's HTML5. It should just work, right? There's some real differences. And then we'll open it up for comments. But sure. Alex, why don't you
I'll start just by commenting on, I think, another problem with mobile, and that's this whole discoverability issue. So, right now there's over 1 million apps on iOS and over 1 million apps on Android. And what I see a lot of people doing is they launch these apps, and they're great apps, and they spend, I don't know how much you guys charge, but maybe you spend, $200K for each device, or $50 to $200K for each device, and then no one actually uses those apps, right? And so, there's this great example. I was at Apple maybe a year ago talking with them, and has anyone here used the Smithsonian app, the iPad app for Smithsonian? It's a great app, right? It looks great, has great content. Hopefully you don't work at Smithsonian, do you? Okay. It's a great app. It has great content. They love it there, but it has very low usage, right? And they probably spent maybe $200 to $500K to actually build that app. And I think this is a real issue when you go from this channel paradigm of TV where every kind of channel has their, there's maybe 500 to 1,000 channels to millions of apps. You're competing with social networks, gaming companies, et cetera. How do you get people to engage with your app? And so there's a lot of companies springing up that help with engagement with apps, drive people back to your applications. And that's something we do as well, but there's a bunch of companies sort of focusing on that space. How do you get people back to your application? So I think that's one. I think you want to take it kind of
more from a development perspective.
Yeah, right.
So what are some of the differences of developing on
right.
a mobile environment, kind of a browser-based environment,
right.
versus embedded device hardware?
Right. So I think the decision most app makers make. So well, first of all, there's if you're creating an app, is it going to be sort of an HTML wrapped app? So is the HTML going to be kind of the core of it, or is it going to be native? And what we've seen by and large, everything from Facebook to a ton of companies transition from HTML to native experiences. They're just smoother experiences. The app is more responsive. You have access to more functionality. And there's a big debate raging around which way you should go. But from my perspective, the cleanest apps, and I think the trend is still the best apps are built with native, which makes it harder to port to different ecosystems.
That's right. Okay, excellent. Evan?
I think that's definitely true on mobile, and that you'll find the best experiences done native. I think, when you come to television devices, I can speak a little bit for TiVo, but also I think we did our own connected TV a few years ago, and I think the sort of television-attached devices industry, if you will, did not do itself any favors, but it's a very fragmented market between, folks having different chipsets, whether it's Broadcom, Sigma, ST, or whatnot, and over the past few years, folks doing stuff in Flash AS2, Air AS3, HTML5. So there really is not a fantastic native story for developing for TV-attached devices unless you're into the realm of specifically for Xbox or specifically for PlayStation or specifically for Roku. So I think what you're going to see in the next 2-3 years for connected devices, and I guess I'm speaking broadly about not game consoles, but televisions, Blu-ray players, and set-top boxes of kind of our ilk, is a definite shift towards HTML5, because it does, as much as HTML5 does have some ways to go, it abstracts some of the chipset and other platform differences away. What you will see, though, is definitely, folks, I think one of the challenges is, of course, a lot of people coming out of mobile and tablet, are used to designing for, a foot away from your face as opposed to 10 feet with a remote control. You do have the problems pointed out of the remote controls are all different. And so, there are some platforms that handle that well and some that don't. But I think there's a separation of UI done in HTML5, and you'll see playback handled out of basically HTML5 video tag plugged down to MSE EME. And that's really the architecture that you're going to see going forward.
That's great. Imran, I'm wondering if you have a perspective. I mean, 15 devices in the first year, I was quite blown away with that number. That's very impressive. Share your thoughts, because you obviously had an app on mobile and the various OSs, popular OSs, as well as hardware.
That's right. So mobile devices, you'll definitely get a better experience going native. You'll also pay more. So you've got to figure out not just the initial cost of development, but the cost of maintenance and the cost of being on that platform and keeping up to date as things move forward. So for example, when Apple moved to iOS 7, we had to update our app because certain things broke, but also you'll want, we designed a new experience around our app to better fit the user experience in iOS 7. And so if you download our iOS or Android apps, you'll note, and if you downloaded them last year and then downloaded them this year, you'll notice a new and different experience. But that takes investment. That takes investment both in design as well as in development, and really understanding the use cases for mobile and how they may be different from a video perspective from a TV device. That said, we have seen a movement on the TV devices towards HTML5. The MSE and EME media extensions aren't really all that well deployed yet, but I think there's a lot of promise and potential there. I'm looking forward to seeing how more platforms really abstract away the DRM details, because that is always the longest pole in developing an app for us, is making sure that video playback and DRM all work smoothly and properly. It's not enough to say that this platform supports PlayReady or this platform supports secure media or Widevine. There's enough variance within implementations of DRM platforms that it's still almost a unique integration as you move forward with each DRM system. So that's one where for us it's the lesson learned was get video playback working first. Everything else will fall into place.
That's right. That's great. So one of the things that I like to try and achieve in my panels is if there's even just one small little nugget that you can take away and apply, as you walk out the door, that's an objective, because I realize it's easy for us to come and we can talk at this really high level, and you walk out and you say, okay, now what? I'm just as confused as before. So I'm going to throw this out for the panel. Could you share, and this is open, so whoever grabs the ball first, maybe a case study or an example of a device, and walk through for the audience, in 2 or 3 minutes, so short, what the process was, how you went about making a decision to support the device, how you chose the technologies, what compromises you had to make. I think reality is, I've seen a lot of the projects I've been involved in, sometimes they get bogged down looking for perfection and looking for the ultimate experience. And at the end of the day, I like your statement, Imran, you got to serve video and get on as many devices as quickly as possible. And you iterate, right? And I'm sure your player experience has gotten better, and some probably started very high, and maybe you had to compromise. So who would like to take this and share a case study or an example or something?
I'll be happy to
Good,
You
George.
know, but I can bring a couple of examples, but first one, at least to start with, I'll take implementations that we've done on the Roku device. Actually, Roku has its own development environment, so there is not that much alternatives to try something else, even like even HTML5. It's not applicable, I believe, in this particular case as an option. But what was interesting is that it's actually very simple, very low cost, I think, implementation compared to other devices to build a system. By the way, based on my understanding, it's Opera devices, which I believe TiVo is compliant now with.
Yep.
It's also, as a note, you can take a note that it's very low, a relatively low cost implementation, which, in my opinion, automatically guarantees higher chances of popularity, because every time you lower the cost with sufficient or good enough quality, there's a chance that you get suddenly huge popularity in terms of units. Obviously, content is a king, but and users still have to pay for the transferred cost of development, which we mentioned before. So Roku, now the Roku device has to have its own development environment. It's not that difficult to build. It's very good to development environment, but there is also special requirements for the backend. So it took some time for us to tune a backend. Even Roku has published, actually, unlike Google devices, as an example, Google TV or Android devices, there are almost no recommendations from Google on the streaming side. Streaming meaning backend side. While from Roku you have absolutely a great document which describes what exactly system expects from the point of view like our end user device, what kind of encoding, what kind of how many segments, the length of the segments, and so on and so on. So I think the combination of the application itself and the backend, which, by the way, I'm not, we are, since we're a complete solution company, we were able to control all the aspects of the implementation, including transcoding into specific format, including, like I said, up to the level, like you obviously heard about, so-called HLS, when the whole stream is getting chunked in a small portions or chunks, actually. We're able to control everything, number, lengths, keyframes, all this stuff. And I think one of the best experience so far among all the devices that we built for, it's a Roku actually. And again, it's the third time probably I'm mentioning now, or we did mention here, it's an experience with a remote experience. And I'm not in any way to promoting it, just a case scenario, because there are other aspects of a Roku implementation which has limitations. It will be on user interface side, or it will be actually HTML5 side, or there are some other areas which Roku has some limitations on. But this is just one case scenario that I at least try to share with you.
So if I can summarize, it sounds like what you're saying is now in this case, of course, we all know that Roku has a very wide user base, so it would appear that that's an obvious choice. But what I hear George saying is that the device selection was based on the fact it was an easy to implement SDK, well documented. In other words, the manufacturer, had it been more complex, even with the footprint, you would have still developed for it, but it would have been more difficult. So.
Yes.
Okay, in the interest of, and we could spend some more time, and sorry, did someone else want to jump in? Because if there is a...
I was just going to say that, the process we go through when we're evaluating new devices is, one, obviously the installed base. What, is it a large amount of devices, a large amount of potential subscribers or video viewers for us? Another one is the ease of development. Some devices may be very largely penetrated, but also require a lot of unique development, which makes it the cost side of the equation a lot harder. And then the third is it an open platform, or is there a business development deal that we would need to do with the OEM? And so there's a number of these factors, cost of development, Are our video streams compatible? And with most devices these days they are. How expensive is it to port or to build a new app in a native experience? And how do we get placement on the device? Is it an open app store, or is it something where you have to work out a business development deal with the OEM? And those are the kind of factors that go into whether we decide to go onto a device or not. And then from there, there's a number of different development steps too.
How difficult is it to get that information, particularly complexity? So, now you are Redbox, a brand that everybody knows. You're, powered by Verizon. So I'm guessing that when you call someone up, they're going to answer your call. But, if I'm a new service, it's probably more challenging. So share with the audience, how would I go about discovering even development complexity or answering some of these questions? Just trying to do my due diligence.
So we do enjoy the benefit of a lot of great partners in the OEM space, and so that does help us. But a lot of the information is really available on the web or on forums if you dig around for it, on how to develop an app and whether a particular device supports a platform you might already be involved with. So for example, iOS is pretty much a native platform, and you kind of have to know Objective-C in order to build an application there. Android, same thing except with Java. However, there are some set-top boxes that are based on Android, and you can leverage your Java development and your app development for that platform, and that helps reduce the cost. It won't take it away completely, but it'll help reduce it if you already have an Android app. Similarly, a lot of connected TV devices are moving toward HTML5, and if you've got an HTML5 app implementation, that helps reduce your cost to develop on that platform as well. But I think it's a safe bet to say that any very high volume devices, whether it's a game console or a Roku or an Apple TV, you'll want to take the time to do some unique development, and that'll also result in some cost. But as I said from the beginning, where you draw your architecture line between your data platform and your app development will really inform how easy or hard it'll be to make each incremental application.
Excellent.
Maybe if I can jump in, I'll talk about a little bit coming from the other direction, because at TiVo we think about how is it that we are going to attract many of the best apps to our platform. We are, one of a few different varieties out there. I think, as we mentioned on this panel, I think our big advantage is that we are actually deployed on input one along with linear television, with our cable operators. But at the same time, we have the issue of, we have a few million boxes out there, but, if you are an app maker, we realize you've got to think iOS, Android, game platforms, and then when am I going to develop for TiVo? So part of this is why we did adapt the Opera SDK, because it is very common out there. It's on pretty much every single Blu-ray platform that's out there. So as developers kind of think, what is my motivation to develop for a platform, and what kind of distribution can I get? They say, if I develop for Opera, I know I can get to TiVo plus a bunch of other devices. I would say, I think, the thing for us really is, anything that's developed for the Opera TV store, we let through to TiVo through our implementation of that store. But if you want a higher placement in TiVo, that's more of a business decision, and sometimes one that our operators get involved in. We now have things like Netflix deployed, on operator boxes, which was no small feat. But those are things like we think that our cable operator partners actually are looking for the sexiness of third-party apps, right? The sort of things that I think Apple and others helped bring to the wireless space. We are trying to bring to the MSOs who've not been previously innovating as much.
So one question I have related to what you just said, correct me if I'm wrong, but Netflix is actually now available in the channel guide.
That's right.
So that's amazing, because now I'm just surfing. As, by the way, the numbers are astronomical. I know you have so many stats in your head, Alex, but it's something like 80 or 90%, of TV viewers, when they're sitting on the couch, they are channel up, channel down. So as much as we talk about all these really cool immersive experiences. At the end of the day, it's channel up, channel down until I find something. So my question to you, Evan, is it possible, again, for me as an app developer to get my app into the channel guide, or is that do I need to be Netflix to do that?
It certainly is possible, but I would say that's more of a business question than a technical one.
So that's a business development, not a technical
That's right.
issue.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, and I mean, we found on our platforms, yes, there are people who channel surf in the traditional way. There are lots of people who use our second screen app as their guide. They sit in their lap and they use it to control their TiVo. And there are some people, who use search and browse. I think consumers are not monolithic. They will come across apps and content in a number of different ways. I think the channel guide was logical because as we bring on more, let's call them, mainstream, not early adopters, right? They are used to using the channel guide, so putting Netflix there is an easy way to help them find it. But we do find that, if you're looking for something, whether it's like extreme sports videos or something like that, people realize there isn't a channel for that. They're going to use search, and that's where we have to have search integration done.
Right. Great. Okay. Well, we could spend another 10 or 15 minutes on this, but we need to move on. I want to talk about content prep, and that is, I can have a great user experience, a player that sits on the device, but if the device can't decode the video, if it doesn't support the DRM, then I'm going to have a problem. Or I'm going to run into, sitting in the Netflix presentation earlier, and they've got more than 50 profiles. That's just staggering. Now, if you only have 1,000 videos, I guess that means you only have 50,000 assets. That's staggering. Your library is only 1,000. The point is, I'd like to hear from the panel what codecs, what formats. Again, if the goal is the smallest footprint of video files that I need to create, but the broadest reach across mobile, across browser, across connected television. Again, I'll throw it out there. Whoever wants to grab it first. Maybe Imran, since, again, you have a lot of experience delivering, can you comment on what codecs should we be thinking about? Are there bitrate considerations?
So in fact, all of our video right now is H.264. And we use adaptive streaming from a couple of different vendors. We use HLS as well as Microsoft Smooth Streaming. And between the two of those, we can cover pretty much any device that we've had to cover so far. There's a couple that we're missing, but all the devices we've been able to get to so far have been between those two streaming formats. And obviously, DRM is another variable to throw into the mix there. But in general, today's ecosystem for over-the-top devices, H.264 and either HLS or Smooth Streaming will get you very far, or Adobe's solution is also pretty good. So I'm not making an endorsement anyway, but adaptive bitrate streaming for H.264 is where it's at today. That said, looking down the roadmap for a lot of connected TV and other OEMs. We are seeing support for H.265 and HEVC. We're not making a ton of investment there yet, but when there's a significant tipping point in the number of platforms that support that, that's when I think it'll be a really important play for us because of the reduction in file size and in the amount of bandwidth you need to stream. So that's something that we're looking at in the future.
Alex, does it look the same on tablets? H.264, yeah. HLS?
Yeah.
Okay. And you primarily are working with iOS or
mostly
Android?
iOS, yeah.
iOS. Okay. All right. Anybody else have anything to add, George?
If I may, actually about Netflix, I heard that they have 900 formats. Doesn't mean 900 different files maybe per each video clip, but 900 formats, which is a combination of probably resolutions and bit rates and whatever it is. And it may be interesting maybe, but not everyone can come up with a business model which supports all this stuff. So based on our experience, up until now, what we're doing is just multi-bit version of the alpha video content. Usually it's 2 or 3 video bit rates, and this is at this point is more than enough with the same approximate resolution for all kind of devices. Mobile devices are pretty powerful at this day, and all the files that we're using codec is H.264 AC. Obviously, we're using different so-called profiles. Probably some of you know that would be main, baseline, and so on. Whenever it's necessary, we're also doing sometimes custom installations or custom setups for specific devices when it's necessary. But if we take kind of a generic solution, it's H.264 AC LE, so-called format. Regarding size is very important. Size of the files is very important. And obviously, when we have a video clip of X, gigabyte per video clip, we have to add at least the same amount to feel comfortable, which means 2 more resolutions with a lower bit rate. So compression, obviously, it's a huge component, and I think if we'll be able to get it to the higher values, meaning with smaller size of files, this is what we're looking as a part of our solution, because it saves actually cost for our customers, because we're handling our own CDN, and when it's compressed, obviously you have lesser traffic over CDN, and more successful our customers are, we're more successful in that case. So why it's in our interest to make the best solutions. In this specific case, it's H.264 with sufficient quality and compression, which will let our customers to save cost. Regarding H.265, so far we didn't have too many inquiries, and we don't have any installations yet in production about 265. And everybody may have their own opinion, obviously, but in my opinion, it may take some time. And the reason, in my opinion, why it's happening is because of there are a lot of hardware manufacturers who have H.264 ASICs or hardware implementations, while with H.265, at least among popular devices, I don't know any which has H.265 hardware implementation, which definitely will affect performance, and it all comes to the user experience, which I was
That's right. So it sounds like we agree. H.264, AAC, HLS, you're going to hit pretty much every device you want to be on. Okay, it is 3:21. I want to leave a few minutes for questions and answers, some Q&A time. But I'd like to wrap up real quick. I want to talk about just kind of the role of devices. And we've already hit some of this, but I've got this grouped into mobile connected TVs and kind of next generation, set-top boxes, game consoles, et cetera. Let's start with mobile. And in particular, I'm curious about the Chromecast. So a device like that, and Alex, this is probably right up your alley. I know that you've optimized your experience around devices like the Chromecast. So tell us, what is the role of let's call it, devices that are tethered to the screen via some sort of a dongle or a device like Chromecast or Chromecast. Is that important? If I'm delivering content, should that be like, a key part of my strategy, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a big vision around Chromecast and where that can go, right? I think the vision. Share it with us. Well, I think the vision is that you have one of these devices, you have screens all over your house, and you can just cast content to different screens as you're kind of going around the house. So there's this Corning video. Like, have any of you guys seen that Corning video? Glass video? No, you should check it out. It's a glass company out of Canada, I think, and that's the vision. So that's where the world is headed, right? There's going to be screens everywhere, and these devices are going to cast content and interact with those screens. Now that may take some time, but I think so. Chromecast is kind of V1 of that. I don't know that Google has released their sales numbers for Chromecast. Do you guys know? There's a few million, I think, is what I've heard. Yeah. I think from what I've heard from the ecosystem, Chromecast is eating into some of the other STB players out there. Folks like WD, probably Roku, Netgear, those types of folks. So a lot of times people buy those devices to get Netflix, and now there's a great way to get Netflix on your TV using a Chromecast.
So I don't want to go down a rabbit trail, but I think this is interesting. Should I, again, we're talking about fast tracking. The whole panel, the whole discussion, the purpose of what we're doing here today is if I own content, I want to get it out in front of as many people as possible. How do I fast track that? What's the best way to do that? What's the lowest cost way? What's the fastest way? So you said something very interesting because, I don't have off the top of my head the numbers, but we all know they're huge. Tablet penetration, just the tens of millions of devices that are owned. I mean, households now have something on the order of 9 connected devices. The average U.S. household has like 9 connected devices in their home. When I first saw that statistic, I thought, well, okay, every house but mine, and I'm in the industry. And then I went, well, wait a second. Started counting up, all the smartphones and the tablets and all the devices, and sure enough, I had more than 9. So on the surface, I didn't know if that was true. So the question is that a viable strategy? Like, what if I chose to just have an iOS app and an Android app, and direct my users to go get a Chromecast or some other device that I've integrated with, and that's my strategy. And I just really build a killer experience on the tablet. And if someone says, buy one of my Roku box, say, sorry, but look how awesome this is on your iPad. Is that viable, or is there a hole in that somewhere?
I think that's a strategy that may work for some content.
What content might that work for?
Well, but I guess I was going to say on the other side, not to come specifically from a TiVo point of view, but even Netflix wants to be on the set-top box that television and cable are coming through. And I think,
is that because sorry to interrupt, but I think that's a key point. Is that because there's an experience advantage there? There must be a reason why they want to be there.
I think, I think there are a lot of competing devices out there. Our research shows, that people will have their television tuned to actual television 40 to 50 hours a week. And they may switch over to an OTT device a couple hours a week, depending on if they want to. It is the difference of going from input 1 to input 2 and input 3. And I think, among an early adopter, sort of elite, that's an okay behavior. That can work. You say, I have, one device for over-the-top and another for television. But I think if you want to get into the flow of where the user is, you want to be on the device that they are, most of the time. Now, for some people who have cut the cord and the tablet is their primary device, sure, develop a killer app for that device and make sure you win that battle. Otherwise, it is, how do I participate in the television ecosystem?
So, again, we could spend a lot of time unpacking this, but Imran, and sorry, George, I'll get to you, but Imran, I want to ask you an important question about this because you have premium licensed content. Now, of course, TiVo, you're also working with operators, but is there, what I'm trying to get to is there a licensing restriction, or is there a reason that even if I like this approach and I said, this is how I wouldn't be able to do it because maybe I couldn't get the content rights, or maybe the security is not sufficiently robust? You're shaking your head, so
well,
I think
the reason I'm shaking my head is I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal
That's
advice.
the qualification. None of us are lawyers up here.
Yeah, but we just launched on Chromecast 2 weeks ago, and all of our content is studio content, and it's well protected by the DRM implementation there. So I think.
So you were able to deliver.
We are able to do that.
Good.
It takes you longer to figure that out and figure out exactly all the nuances around it. It's a lot easier to develop an app that doesn't have DRM than an app that does have DRM. But for premium content, studio content, it's a reality. It's a requirement, and we're able to do that with Chromecast and things like it.
Okay, that's awesome. Unfortunately, we're literally coming up against the end. And George, I know you wanted to comment, so I'm going to start with you. And this is 30 seconds. We have to be fast because I do want to open up for Q&A if there's some questions. But George, starting with you and coming back down the line, just 30 seconds. Summarize what your company is focused on this year, or right now, major initiative, that would be helpful to the audience looking to fast track supportive content on devices?
Since we're a complete IPTV solution company, I think we have a huge advantage over a lot of potential our competition from several angles. One, we're responsible for all the parts. You know, when you're going to someone and they're building just a small piece, it will be in an app, or someone is just a CDN and someone just responsible for security, or and so on. So we're responsible for a complete solution. We're building apps, we're servicing all the content delivery, CRM, and all this, starting from ingest action and transcoding. So that allows us to do two things, in my opinion. One of them is to be complete control of the whole solution. So nothing, there is no one that you can point finger to if something is not working right. So we have to make sure that everything works perfectly, or as much as possible perfectly. The second is its cost. So it's all our internal cost. So we're one of the most cost-effective, actually, companies among anyone that we met here on Europe. We haven't tried Asia yet, but you know, this is
excellent. I want to make sure because we're bumping up against. So, and you have a booth, correct? So they can meet you afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay, Evan, what are you focused on this year? What's TiVo working on?
Sure. We're focused on bringing great apps to TiVo and especially rolling them out through our MSO channel so that a lot of our subscribers who get TiVo through cable can get those apps. If you want to develop for TiVo, you can go to developer.tivo.com or dev.opera.com/TV, and that's where you can download everything you need.
So for us, our focus last year was really getting on as many devices as possible, and that's where we did this huge push for app development. But at Redbox Instant, our focus this year is to be the #1 place for movie lovers, whether you want to watch a movie on your disc or whether you want to watch a movie for streaming. And so we're working on optimizing our experience and really focusing on our improved discovery for movies and movie lovers to watch movies.
Yeah, and we're focused on working with top-tier content providers and to drive users back to their applications via a variety of different techniques, including personalized push notifications, including personalization in the actual app experience itself.
Awesome. Okay. Any quick questions? All right. Okay. Yes.
One question. When TiVo did a lot of innovation, the whole DVR concept was came from TiVo. Is there anything new that TiVo that you could share that TiVo is considering and it's going to happen release sometime soon? Something new, either new feature or something revolutionary that might be coming along?
I mean, I'm happy to take that offline. I mean, we've got plenty of stuff that we're doing that not just on the set-top box, but on mobile and tablet and TV everywhere. We develop experiences for all 3 screens, so we're a full-service provider for our cable partners.
Great. So I want to be sensitive to the break. I know the exhibits are open. Please join me in thanking this great panel. You're a great audience. Thank you.